Welcome, dear dreamer. Let the candles flicker low. Let the silk curtains stir with the hush of the wind. Let the world around you quiet as we drift toward Austria. Not the Austria of today, the one from long ago, where palaces echoed with etiquette, and every daughter knew her value was political. And in one such palace, Schönbrunn, a young girl stood very still, waiting. If you enjoy these quiet, scandalous journeys through history, tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for a new sleepy story every night. Her name was Maria Antonia Josepha Joanna. She was 15, laughing one moment, trembling the next. Not quite a child, not quite a queen. She was not yet Marie Antoinette. That name, like a costume, was waiting for her in France. She had always known she was different, not because she was clever. She wasn't especially. Not because she was bookish. She was not. But because people watched her differently. She was the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa, the last spark in a long line of imperial strategy. Her brothers trained to command, her sisters trained to marry, and Maria Antonia, she learned to curtsy with grace, to smile on cue, to become pleasing, not powerful, because that was how a girl survived in satin. When the offer came from France, her mother didn't ask her opinion. She simply announced it. You are to be their Dauphine, she said, the future Queen of France. Maria Antonia nodded. She had practiced this moment, pretended for years, but the reality was heavier than the rehearsal. To seal the marriage, they stripped her of everything. Literally. At the border between Austria and France, she was undressed, all Austrian garments removed, down to bare skin. She was redressed in French silk, French powder, French perfume. She crossed the border with nothing Austrian on her body, and with each layer she disappeared a little. Maria Antonia faded. Marie Antoinette was born. She did not speak the language well. She stumbled through her first greetings, laughed too brightly, blushed too easily. The French court was watching, and not kindly. Versailles was a jungle of smiles and survival, of whispered judgment behind painted fans, of women with daggers tucked in their words. And Marie was not ready. Still, they admired her beauty, her grace, her skin like porcelain lit from within. She was a doll, a delicate one, and everyone loves to dress a doll. So the ladies of court began to pull her this way and that, advising, correcting, critiquing. The wrong color, the wrong way to bow, the wrong laugh. But even as she stumbled, she sparkled. She had something, the kind of thing you can't teach. A tilt of the chin, a way of turning her head just so. A smile that looked accidental but always landed in the right direction. The court didn't trust her, but it couldn't look away. Her husband, Louis Auguste, the awkward Dauphin, barely noticed her. He was shy, more comfortable with locks and gears than with girls. He did not touch her, not for weeks, not for months. Some say not for years, the court whispered. Paris speculated, but Marie said nothing. She learned early, silence is safer than truth. So she turned elsewhere, to friends, to fashion, to fantasy. If she could not be adored as a wife, she would be adored as an image, and she was very good at it. Every morning she was dressed before a crowd, not servants, ladies of rank. They took turns handing her her stockings, her corset, her gown. It was not private, it was a performance. And Marie began to understand. If everything is theater, she might as well enjoy the spotlight. She chose colors no one else dared, piled her hair high with plumes and powdered curls, wore diamonds like they cost nothing, because for her, they didn't. The public began to ask what she wore, to copy her styles, to dream of her gowns. She was not just a queen in waiting, she was becoming a trend. Not everyone was pleased. Some said she was too frivolous, too childish, too foreign. But others, they lined up to see her ride in her carriage. They tore out sketches of her from fashion pamphlets. They named their daughters after her. Marie didn't give speeches, she didn't pass laws, but with a glance, a dress, a smile, she influenced. Let the candles burn lower now. She is in her chambers, feet sore from the shoes, lips still stained rose pink, hair unpinned. But even here, alone, unpowdered, she knows someone is watching. The mirror. Always. And the mirror is just starting to admire what it sees, because the girl is gone, and the queen, the icon, is beginning to rise. Let the sun climb slowly over Versailles. Its golden face reflects off windows, off mirrors, off the dew beating across manicured lawns. The palace glows before it breathes. And inside, Marie Antoinette is waking, not as Maria Antonia, she's long gone now, but as a new version of herself, a curated one. French, almost. They told her the transition would be natural, that she'd learn the words, the steps, the ways, but they didn't tell her how loud the silence would be, how every move, from how she sat to how she bit into bread, would be watched. Versailles was not a home, it was a stage, and Marie was always being watched by courtiers, by maids, by ladies who smiled like statues and whispered like breezes. She tried at first to remember who she had been. She wrote letters home, in German, at night in secret. She tucked a ribbon into a drawer from Vienna. But gradually, those pieces faded. Because being French wasn't about learning, it was about shedding. She had to lose the accent, the laughter, the way she walked, held her hands, turned her head. The French court was exacting, and femininity there was a script, not a feeling. So she learned. She learned that modesty was a performance, that flirtation was currency, that mystery was more powerful than opinion, and she adapted quickly. Too quickly, some said, as though she was becoming French not from pride, but from a kind of vanishing. The king, Louis XV, approved of her quietly. He nodded when she smiled. He called her pretty. He sent her ribbons. And his grandson, her husband, remained shy. Still a stranger, still unsure. They shared a bed sometimes, but not much else. So Marie filled the space with something else. Charm. She laughed at the right jokes, giggled at the wrong ones, clapped delicately at concerts. She wore pastels and pearls, embroidered roses and floating sleeves. Even when she felt uncertain, she looked exactly right. And in court, looking right was more than enough. Soon she wasn't just imitating French style, she was defining it. Other women copied her gowns. Hairdressers asked what she'd be wearing next. Sketches of her outfits made it into fashion pamphlets across Paris. She didn't speak often in public. She didn't have to. Her wardrobe did the talking. But image is a delicate thing, and the more perfect she looked, the less real she seemed. Some began to murmur that she smiled too easily, that she danced too often, that she had no child, and too much joy. She wasn't behaving like a queen, or perhaps she was behaving like one, just not the kind they wanted. And Marie, still so young, didn't yet understand that in France beauty came with rules. You could shine, yes, but not too brightly. You could charm, but only the right people. And the people were starting to wonder what lay beneath all that powder. Meanwhile, inside her own skin, Marie was starting to wonder too. Who was she now? A Frenchwoman? A queen in waiting? A symbol? She still wrote her mother, though less often now. She still thought in German sometimes. But the girl she had been was only a whisper. Let the gowns slip off their hangers now. Let the mirrors mist from morning breath. Marie Antoinette sits perfectly still, while her ladies layer her into the day. One woman powders her face, another tightens the corset, another chooses the necklace. Marie says nothing. She just stares straight ahead. The mirror shows a queen, but it does not show the girl who stepped over that border, stripped of her language and lace. That girl is sleeping now, somewhere deep beneath layers of silk. And the new Marie, she's awake, she's dressed, and she's ready for court. Let the gold doors open. Let the courtiers curtsy. Let the Queen of France, not yet crowned, not yet beloved, walk into the room. She does not speak. She smiles, because that's all they're really asking for. And because she's learning that smiles can be more powerful than words. The bells of Versailles are beginning to chime. The scent of roses fills the air. And somewhere behind it all, a girl becomes a mirror, just long enough to be adored. Not in battle, but in lace, glances, and quiet control. Let the chandeliers flicker to life. Let the long hallways fill with perfume, whispers, and the soft brushing of satin on polished floors. Versailles is not just a palace, it is a performance, and Marie Antoinette is learning how to play her part. Every movement here is choreography. You do not just arrive, you make an entrance. You do not simply walk, you glide in shoes made more for watching than walking. And when you speak, you don't always say what you mean. You say what sounds beautiful. Marie wakes in a room touched by sunlight and expectation. There are footsteps outside, murmurs, doors opening and closing. She will be dressed in front of witnesses today. She always is, because nothing here is private, not even you. A lady in waiting hands her a stocking. Another adjusts her sleeves. Another chooses a fan. They all curtsy between movements like dancers. And Marie, she stands still, not passive, practiced. It is morning, and already she is performing. Down the halls people gather, not to speak to her, just to watch her. A glimpse of the Dauphine, the queen to be. They note the shape of her hat, the color of her ribbon, the way she raises a single brow at a joke she's heard before. Marie Antoinette has not yet worn a crown, but she wears something else, attention, and it fits. At court her role becomes clear, not to rule, not to decide, but to embody, to represent taste, lightness, elegance. She is not asked for policy, she is asked for presence. And presence, it turns out, is a powerful thing. She leans into it, lets her gowns lengthen, lets her fans flutter like butterfly wings, lets her laughter echo softly through the salons. She learns how to disappear into charm, to offer just enough without giving too much. The king still favors his grandson. But the court? The court has picked her. Even the walls seem to lean toward her. Paintings reflect her colors. Servants await her footsteps. Draperies match her moods. Versailles becomes her stage. And the audience? Hungry. Fashion houses begin sending gowns on speculation. Wig makers compete to outdo themselves. Perfume makers name scents in her honor. She does not ask for these things, but she does not refuse them. Because every ribbon tied, every bodice fastened, every pearl clipped to her ear is a decision. And she's learning that decisions, however subtle, can shape the world. In salons, women gossip, but when Marie enters, they hush. They lean forward, not out of fear, out of fascination. She is not cruel, not cold. She is something else, distant but magnetic, soft but untouchable. She never demands, she draws. And yet, there are days when she tires of the performance, days when the shoes pinch, when the corset presses too tight, when every glance feels like a weight she did not ask to carry. She slips away when she can, into gardens, into music, into letters no one sees. But even alone she senses it, the invisible audience, the feeling that someone somewhere is watching. Versailles does not sleep, and it does not forget. Her husband remains quiet. He smiles at her during dinner, stands beside her during ceremonies, but they orbit different stars. He is thoughtful, deliberate. She is luminous, instinctive. They are not enemies, but they are not companions. Not yet. Marie learns to fill the silence with silk, with sparkle, with attention. If she cannot be queen in title, she will be queen in everything else. And the people? They notice. They name their daughters after her. They ask tailors for her silhouettes. They study her expressions looking for clues. They do not know her, but they feel they do, because Marie, in her quiet brilliance, has become a kind of mirror. Everyone sees what they want to see, and she reflects it flawlessly. Let the salons fall quiet now. Let the candlelight soften the edges of every portrait. Marie sits at a harpsichord, fingers hovering above the keys, not playing, just listening. The palace behind her hums with distant voices, but in this moment she is still. The performance pauses, just for a breath, because even the most perfect role must rest, and even the most glittering woman must blink. Let the gardens bloom behind the palace. Let the fountains trickle like a lullaby. Let the court whisper, as it always does, just outside the room. Inside, Marie Antoinette sits perfectly still. The ladies wait. The fabric rustles. A decision is being made. What color will she wear today? It seems like a small thing, but it isn't. Not at Versailles, not when the world is watching, because here a gown is not just a gown. It is a message, a strategy, a form of quiet golden power. Marie has learned this well, better perhaps than anyone. She no longer waits to be adored. She orchestrates it with silk, with scent, with a tilt of the chin that suggests both grace and distance. She is not crowned, but she is watched, and that in Versailles is a kind of reign. Still the murmurs persist. She has no heir. The marriage remains strangely still, polite but not passionate. The court wonders. Paris speculates. But Marie says nothing. She smiles. She sparkles. She distracts. And slowly the whispers turn to admiration or imitation. Her hair begins to rise, higher and higher, cushioned, sculpted, feathered, a powdered tower of defiance. Other women follow suit. They race to keep up, but Marie is always just one step ahead. Not louder, not flashier, just more certain. The seamstresses adore her. The critics sharpen their pens. And in shop windows across Paris, the Antoinette look is recreated again and again. Not just gowns, but gestures. Not just perfume, but posture. She's no longer simply fashionable. She's becoming the source. Yet with every ribbon tied, she becomes more mysterious, more admired, less understood. Because the woman behind the image, she's still waiting, still wondering what it means to be chosen but not consulted, married but not loved, powerful but not in the ways that matter. So she turns her focus elsewhere. If she cannot rule the court by decree, she will rule it by style. She begins to assemble her own circle, not of advisers, of admirers, women who flatter, laugh, follow. They call her Madame Deficit behind her back, some for her spending, some for the space between image and reality, but none turn away from her, because being near her means being seen. At Versailles, even invisibility is a threat. So Marie makes everyone feel like a character in her story, even the ones who don't like her, especially them. She throws masked balls, wears satin the shade of clouds, waltzes barefoot in gold-threaded slippers. Each appearance feels like a painting, each retreat like a mystery. Still, not all are charmed. There are pamphlets now, caricatures, quiet criticisms in ornate handwriting. The people outside the palace are beginning to ask real questions. Who is she? What does she do? Why does she cost so much? Marie hears the whispers, but she's still learning how to care. Inside the palace, applause still follows her like perfume, and the outside world, it feels far away. Then one morning, a letter arrives from her mother in Vienna. It is not soft. Maria Theresa never was. She warns her daughter to be careful, to remember duty, to think of legacy, to behave as a queen should, not a doll, not a dancer. Marie folds the letter, stares out the window, says nothing, but something lingers. Not guilt, not shame, something quieter, a knowing that love and performance are not always the same. Still, life goes on. And one day, quietly, unexpectedly, something changes. Her husband begins to visit more often. Not much is said, but the silences grow less awkward. A shared glance here, a brief smile there. Nothing dramatic, but enough. Enough for a door to open, just slightly. And months later there is news. The Dauphine is expecting. Let the bells ring. Let the courtiers curtsy lower than usual. Let the streets of Paris, even just for a moment, soften with delight. The queen-to-be is becoming a mother, and the crown she doesn't yet wear feels a little closer. But even now, Marie knows the game hasn't changed. She is still loved for how she appears, not for what she decides, not for what she understands. Not yet, but she's watching, and she's learning. An influence, the kind that slips through salons and sketches and mirrors, is still hers to command. Let the doors to her private chambers close now. Let the fabric be folded, the cosmetics tucked away. Marie lies back against embroidered pillows, eyes open, mind drifting. She has no throne yet, but she has presence, and presence used carefully can change everything. Sleep now. The fountains murmur, the candelabras flicker, and the Dauphine, not yet crowned but already legendary, is dreaming softly beneath layers of lace. The world still thinks it's watching her, but slowly, gently, she is watching it right back. Let the sun rise pale over the slate rooftops. Let the palace stretch and shift beneath its silk covers. Let the whispers begin again, as they always do. But this time the whispers carry something different. Not scandal, not shame, but style. Marie Antoinette is no longer simply a royal. She's something rarer. She's an icon. She wakes surrounded by fabric, folds of pale lavender, cream, blush, gowns draped over chairs like clouds caught midair, boxes of ribbon, pearl combs, tiny glass perfume bottles like secrets on a tray. She doesn't need to ask what to wear. She chooses. Because Marie Antoinette is now the architect of her own image. Versailles watches. Paris imitates. Every dress she wears becomes a whisper. Every hairstyle a headline. Even her quiet moments are studied. What scent lingers on her gloves? What shade of blue rests on her lids? Is that real straw in her hat? It is. And that's the point. Marie isn't just setting trends. She's telling stories with her style. One day she appears as a Grecian goddess, flowing, serene, otherworldly. The next she's all froth and flowers, powdered to perfection, a confection of courtliness. And then, just when the public thinks it knows her, she steps out in something shocking. A plain white muslin gown. No hoops, no corset, no jewels, just soft linen and a wide sash. She looks like a milkmaid, but a milkmaid painted by a master. And suddenly everyone wants to look like her. It's called the chemise à la reine, and it spreads like perfume through Paris. Light, airy, feminine, free. It becomes a national fixation. And just like that, Marie doesn't just wear a brand, she is one. Not that she'd call it that. She just wanted something lighter, something softer, something that felt more like her. But even her softness has sharp edges. The people begin to talk. They say she's too careless, too modern, too extravagant. They see her portraits in her simple gowns and laugh at the contradiction. Because the linen may be plain, but the image? Crafted, deliberate, expensive. Still the trend continues. The fashion houses in Paris explode with requests. Ladies beg their dressmakers for the queen's look. And shopgirls in modest apartments twist their hair just so, hoping to catch a hint of her illusion. Marie doesn't know them, but they know her, and that's what makes her different. Kings have ruled with armies, queens with alliances. But Marie, she is ruling with a feeling, a look, a silhouette that makes others feel something, even if they don't know why. She escapes to Petit Trianon more and more now, her own private world tucked into the edge of Versailles. No courtiers, no rules, just curated beauty, gardens trimmed to whimsy, cottages painted with perfection. Everything looks effortless, but everything is staged. Even her little farmhouse, even her flowers. There she throws small gatherings, wears straw hats and sings to harpsichords. She drinks lemonade from porcelain cups and walks through the gardens with a basket of real eggs, carried by a servant just out of frame. It's not about deception, it's about ambience. She's creating a story she can live inside and inviting others to admire it. She is no longer a woman, she is a mood, and people fall in love with moods faster than monarchs. But admiration is slippery. And Versailles remembers everything. There are pamphlets now, some satirical, some cruel. They depict her surrounded by lovers or sipping gold leaf tea while France grows hungry. None of it is true, but some of it feels true. Because when a woman crafts her image so carefully, people assume there's something she must be hiding. Marie doesn't fight it. She leans in. She hosts masked balls in dresses that glow like candlelight. She rides through gardens in miniature carriages pulled by ponies. She laughs too brightly, knowing it echoes beyond the hedge, because the more they watch, the more she controls the story. But beneath the powder, the pearls, the perfumes, she is tired. Not from dancing, not from dressing, but from performing, every day, without pause. She writes fewer letters home, answers fewer invitations, smiles just a bit more slowly in portraits. Not sad, just stretched, like a ribbon that's been pulled too tight. And still, the gowns arrive, the sketches, the hats, the new shades of silk designed just for her, because the world cannot look away. And Marie, she has forgotten what it feels like not to be seen. The queen is resting in her curated world. Soft music drifts from the salon, and somewhere in a shop window in Paris, a girl touches a gown that looks almost like the one Marie wore last Tuesday. The brand is alive. The woman still becoming. Let the gates close behind her. Let the stone of Versailles fall away like a backdrop pulled from a stage. Let the garden open, and let her breathe. Because here, just beyond the edge of court, Marie Antoinette has found something soft enough to carry her weight. Petit Trianon, a palace made not of power, but of privacy. It is not large, not grand, but it is hers, entirely, given as a gift by her husband, now King Louis XVI. But it is not about romance. It is about space. A place where she is not a daughter, or a wife, or a queen. Just Marie. She redesigns everything. The rooms, the gardens, the pathways. Walls are painted in pale blue and soft gold. Mirrors catch the light just enough, not to dazzle, but to comfort. In place of stiff etiquette, she installs silence. In place of politics, birdsong. There are no courtiers here, only friends, hand-chosen companions, artists, musicians, poets, women who understand the value of laughter unobserved. They speak gently, move slowly. They do not curtsy. They do not ask for favors. They simply share the air. In this small palace, Marie wears cotton gowns, sometimes linen, loose, unstructured things that ripple like water when she walks. No hoops, no corsets, just a ribbon in her hair. And when she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see a queen. She sees something much rarer, herself. She builds a hamlet, tiny cottages clustered like something from a storybook. There's a dairy, a mill, a pond with swans. Everything trimmed, painted, perfected. She walks among the flowers in straw hats, carries baskets, pets lambs, not as a joke, not as a trick, but because it feels peaceful. She is not pretending to be poor. She is pretending to be free. And for a while the illusion works. But the outside world is not quiet, not for long. And as Paris grows restless, people begin to talk. They hear stories of silk slippers on garden paths, of masked parties among statues, of milkmaids with diamond earrings, of a queen who plays at poverty while the country holds its breath. And though most stories are exaggerated, their echo becomes louder than truth. They say she is careless, that she has abandoned Versailles, that she dances while France crumbles. They forget how young she still is. They forget how little she controls. They forget that even queens are allowed to be tired. Inside Trianon, the roses bloom, but at the gates, pamphlets arrive, drawings, critiques, rumors disguised as wit. They show her as frivolous, as foolish, as foreign, and the image that once made her adored now makes her vulnerable. Marie sees them. She doesn't speak of them often, but she sees, and something inside her begins to hesitate. She retreats deeper, cancels appearances, lets the letters pile up, lets the curtains close a little earlier each evening. She tells herself it's just the season, just a mood, but somewhere inside she knows the tide is shifting, and yet she still believes in the world she's created here, still walks the pathways, still hosts little dinners, still plays music by candlelight with her friends. Because in this world she remembers who she wanted to be, a woman who could breathe, a woman who could choose. Petit Trianon was never meant to be a throne. It was meant to be a mirror. And in that mirror, Marie sees a life where she is not watched, but witnessed, not judged, but held. But outside the gates, the fantasy is misunderstood. The queen's milkmaid dress becomes a symbol of detachment, of decadence, of everything they think she has and they don't. And so, while she dances in her gardens, they begin to turn. Let the candles flicker in her chamber now. Let the harp still its strings. Let the voices fall quiet, not from fear, but from reflection. Marie Antoinette lies in her room at Trianon, eyes open. The moonlight draws lace-shaped shadows on the floor. She's not thinking of gowns or gardens. She's thinking of footsteps and how easily they turn away. Sleep now. The lilies outside her window are just beginning to close. The scent of beeswax and linen fills the air. And the queen, still soft, still luminous, rests inside the kingdom she built to forget the world. But the world hasn't forgotten her. Let the fog roll softly over the Trianon fields. Let the sound of distant horses dissolve into birdsong. Let the stillness linger, just a little too long, because something is changing, not inside the palace, outside it, far beyond the marble, beyond the pearls. In Paris, the mirror is turning, and the reflection is no longer kind. Marie Antoinette does not see it all at once. At first it feels like a shift in the light, a shadow that doesn't belong to anything. The courtiers still curtsy, the gardens still bloom, the musicians still tune their instruments for her evenings. But the air has changed. There are more pamphlets now, printed by hand, passed in taverns and cafes. They call her names, draw her in cruel exaggeration, not as a queen, but as a creature, a symbol of everything they believe Versailles has taken from them. She is suddenly blamed not for her decisions, but for her dresses, her voice, her shoes, her silences. They say she is too rich, too foreign, too visible. They speak of her with strange familiarity, as if they know her, but they do not. They know the image, the brand, the woman who drifted through the salons with powdered hair piled high and lace gloves that kissed her wrists. They don't see her rocking her child to sleep in quiet chambers. They don't see her wiping ink from her fingers after writing her mother in secret. They see the mask, and the mask by now has taken on a life of its own. She becomes a ghost in her own narrative, too vivid to ignore, too distant to understand. Inside the palace, she tries to remain steady. She hosts, she dresses, she smiles. She still walks the Trianon paths, though less often now. She still plans concerts, though fewer attend. She still receives compliments. But behind each one she hears hesitation, not in words, in tone, in timing, the pause before the praise, the glance that flickers too long. Her inner circle shrinks. The friends remain, but even among them something feels altered. Too many eyes now, too many stories escaping the gardens. At night she reads the pamphlets, not because she wants to, because she needs to know what they're saying. Not about her, about the idea of her. And what she sees is a stranger, a woman too lavish, too loose, too distant, a queen of parties, not of people, a mother who prefers fashion to duty. It doesn't matter what's true, it matters what is believed. She writes to her family in Vienna, long letters, careful letters. She tells them she is managing. She tells them the court is unsettled but loyal. She does not say she is frightened, but the space between her lines does. Still, the image must hold. So she hosts a fete, a grand one, candles lining the gardens, musicians flown in from Italy, dresses spun from fabric newly dyed in seafoam and pearl. The king smiles. The guests toast. But Marie watches them all, their shoes leaving prints in the gravel, their laughter just slightly too loud. It feels like the edge of something, a party thrown on the shore before a storm. And somewhere, outside the palace gates, someone is watching too, not with admiration, but with resentment. Because when the people look up at Versailles now, they no longer dream of what they might become. They see what they believe they will never have. And envy turns quietly into something else. Marie senses it, not all at once, but like a draft slipping through a closed window. She wraps herself in shawls. She shortens her walks. She lets the hairdressers lower her styles, just slightly. She stops ordering new gowns, not because she wants to fade, because she's wondering if it might help. But image is a creature that can't be undone. You can soften it, shade it, whisper against it. But once it lives in the public's eye, it walks ahead of you. And when it stumbles, you fall with it. Let the fire burn low now. Let the harpsichord notes drift into silence. Marie Antoinette stands at the window. She doesn't weep. She doesn't speak. She simply watches the fog curl along the paths of Trianon and wonders if they still see her, or only the portrait. Sleep now. The stars are quiet. The queen is still, wrapped in the hush of her own dream, still luminous but flickering. Let the reflection soften, because tomorrow the world might look again, and this time it may not blink. Let the sky stay dim a little longer. Let the curtains remain drawn. Let the perfume of lilies drift gently through the queen's chamber, because today something begins to slip, not loudly, not suddenly, but like the hush before a cracked mirror gives way. The necklace was never meant for her. It was created long before she arrived in France, a masterpiece of diamonds designed for a king's mistress. hundreds of carats, months of work, a piece so grand it had never been worn, only dreamed about. No queen had ever touched it, and Marie Antoinette never would. But stories don't need to be true. They only need to be told. It began, as these things often do, with a lie. A woman, clever, persuasive, pretending to be someone else. A cardinal, eager for power, blinded by hope. A letter, a forged signature, and the whisper of a meeting that never happened in a garden lit by moonlight. She never asked for the necklace. She never wore it. But somehow the diamonds ended up in her story. And once the scandal broke, it didn't matter what was real. It mattered that the public had already decided what they wanted to believe. The queen, they said, was wasteful, uncaring, greedy. She spent as France starved, played at farms while cities begged, laughed in lace while others wept in wool. And now they had proof. A necklace worth fortunes, stolen, they said, by vanity. She wasn't even involved. But in the pamphlets, in the gossip, in the quiet corners of salons, the image was clearer than truth. The courts cleared her name. They said she had no part in the scheme. But outside the palace, the story had already taken root. And once it blooms in the minds of the people, no verdict can prune it. At Petit Trianon, Marie reads the headlines, listens to the chatter. She says nothing, not because she doesn't care, because she knows. If she protests too much, they will call it guilt. If she stays silent, they will call it pride. There is no winning, only waiting. She withdraws, cancels appearances, declines invitations. The garden paths grow quieter. The letters from Vienna grow sharper. The king offers comfort, but little else. He has never understood the theater of court. And now the theater is turning on them. Paris is louder now. There are crowds in the streets. Words like freedom and fairness begin to echo. And in the shadows of those words, the Queen's name flickers, not as a ruler, but as a symbol of everything they resent. Inside Versailles, nothing feels different. The mirrors are still polished. The musicians still play. But Marie senses it, in the way the servants glance too quickly, in the way guests speak just a little too carefully. Her power was never political. It was personal. And now, even that is slipping. She writes again, to her mother, to her brother, to her past, trying to explain a thing she never did, trying to understand how attention, once sweet, has soured. But it is hard to write when the story has already been told. The necklace, the one she never wore, becomes a myth. It appears in paintings, in pamphlets, in dreams. It becomes her crown whether she wants it or not of gold, not of pearls, but of suspicion. Still she dresses each morning, still braids her hair, still receives her children with soft hands and kind words. She has not changed, but the eyes watching her have. Let the wind pass gently through the empty courtyard now. Let the chandeliers glow without sparkle. Let the silence press a little closer. Marie Antoinette stands alone in her chamber, a letter in one hand, a fan in the other. She is not sad. She is not angry. She is simply aware of what attention has become, of how quickly adoration fades. The necklace never reached her skin, but its weight, she carries it all the same. Sleep now. The moonlight slips through sheer curtains. The queen lies still, wrapped in pale linen and the ghost of a lie. Outside, the story continues to grow, but here in this room, everything is quiet, except the hush of a woman, remembering what it felt like to be loved. Let the tapestries fade at the edges. Let the corridors cool with shadow. Let the laughter once constant fall still. Because the palace is changing, not loudly, not with fire or thunder, but with distance. Marie Antoinette feels it first in the morning, the air colder when she wakes, the staff quieter, the dresses simpler, not by choice but by need. Supplies arrive slower, decorations go unreplaced. The orchestra has fewer players, the carriages make fewer trips. It is Versailles still, but smaller, like a theater after the show. The crowds at the gates are no longer waiting to glimpse her. They are shouting. They carry signs, demands. Some wear rags. Some wear smiles that do not reach their eyes. She does not look down on them. She does not look away. She simply wonders when they stopped looking up at her. Her husband, once prince, now king, grows heavier with worry. He holds council after council. He paces. He prays. He hopes the people will understand. But Marie knows they do not want to understand. They want to see change. And the first thing they look at is her. The queen, they say, is the problem. Not because of what she did, but because of what she represents. She is Austria. She is silk. She is everything they feel shut out from. Her image, once beloved, is now evidence. A crown on a head that never bent low enough. Inside the palace there are still dances, still candles, but fewer guests, fewer smiles. The court is thinning, not just in numbers but in heart. Even those who once adored her now keep a careful distance, not out of cruelty, out of fear. She visits Trianon less now. It feels indulgent, and worse, unsafe. The windows are shuttered, the gardens overgrown, the scent of lilies replaced by damp stone. It is no longer her escape. It is a memory. She does not stop dressing. But the gowns are quieter, fewer ruffles, softer colors. No more diamonds. Not because she cares what they think, because it no longer matters what she wears. They've already made up their minds. And yet, she still walks. Through the same halls, with the same posture, back straight, chin lifted, soft hands folded at her waist. Because dignity, like perfume, lingers longer when applied gently. There are new rumors now that she hides food, that she steals, that she writes letters to foreign powers. All untrue, but repeated so often they no longer need proof. They are believed, and belief, as she has learned, is more powerful than fact. She keeps her children close, reads to them softly, lets them braid her hair in the afternoon sun. They do not understand, not fully, but they know the palace is quieter, and their mother's hands, though steady, grip just a little tighter. And then the day comes, not with drums, but with a knock, a delegation, an escort. The family is to be moved, not for punishment, for protection, they say. But Marie knows it is neither. She packs carefully, takes nothing unnecessary, just letters, a locket, a rosary, the things that still feel true. The image stays behind. The gowns, the portraits, the powder, all left to gather dust. They are moved to the Tuileries, a palace in name but not in spirit. Cold walls, bare rooms, guards outside every door. They are not prisoners, but they are not free. Marie sleeps on a harder bed. She wears wool. She wakes to footsteps in the corridor. Sometimes she thinks of Petit Trianon, the soft light, the way the curtains danced in the morning breeze. She doesn't cry. She doesn't speak of it. But at night she lets herself remember, just long enough to feel the difference. And yet, in these narrow rooms, she finds something else. Not image, not influence, but quiet. She writes again, her hand steadier than it has ever been. She writes not to control the story, but to leave behind the truth of it, a truth no one may believe, but one that matters all the same. Let the wind rustle gently through the palace shutters now. Let the candle flicker in its glass. Marie Antoinette sits in a simple chair, not a throne, just wooden velvet. Her gown is gray, her hair unpowdered. She is not posing, she is not performing, she is simply still. Sleep now. The palace is quiet. The queen is quiet. And in the stillness, something more honest begins to bloom. Not beauty, not popularity, but grace, the kind that needs no audience. Let the palace sleep. Let the gardens forget her footsteps. Let the mirrors hold the last shapes of candlelight, because the story is almost done. Marie Antoinette no longer wears the crown, not in gold, not in diamonds, not even in silk. She wears something quieter now, something simpler, something called memory. Years have passed since she last ruled a room with a glance, since her gown was described in print, or her perfume imitated by strangers. She is no longer watched. She is no longer adored. But she is not gone, because even as her days grow smaller, her image lives on, in whispered stories, in fading portraits, in copies of dresses worn by girls who no longer know her name, only the shape of her legend. The revolution moved forward fast and hungry, and Marie, she did not run. She stood where they placed her, walked where they told her, spoke when she was asked to, but she did not perform, not anymore. The queen who once ruled through illusion, let it go. She became a mother, a widow, a quiet figure in a plain dress, and when the world no longer looked at her with wonder, she looked back at it with clarity, not bitterness, not shame, just the soft gaze of someone who has been both adored and despised, and survived both. In the end, they took everything she wore, her crown, her jewels, even her name, but they couldn't take the image, because by then it no longer belonged to her. It belonged to history. They remembered the gowns, the hair, the scandals. They remembered the way she smiled without showing all her teeth, the way she turned a hallway into a stage, the way she carried beauty like it was armor, and fragrance like it was prophecy. They remembered the theater, even if they never knew the girl behind the curtain. And maybe that was the point. Maybe that was what made her different. She didn't rule through command, she ruled through presence, through mood, through mystery, through the ability to be looked at and not quite understood. She became what others wanted to see, until even she couldn't find herself in the reflection. But reflections linger, even after the light fades. Today her name still floats in perfume ads, her silhouette in fashion sketches, her life retold in plays, in stories, in songs. She is remembered as foolish, as glamorous, as doomed, as divine, but rarely as real. And yet, in the quietest moments, she was always real. A girl sent away too young, a woman loved too late, a queen crowned too carelessly. But through it all, an influencer, before the word existed. Now breathe in and out. Let the mirrors grow soft at the edges. Let the petals fall from the silk fan. The queen has done enough. No more performances. No more appearances. Only stillness. Only sleep. You are safe. You are warm. And the story is at rest. Good night, dear dreamer.